Do you need a DI pedal? What is a DI pedal? And if I need one, what am I looking for? I'm Twisty, and in this video, I'm going to take you through what a DI box or DI pedal is for bass, why you might want one, how they work, and towards the end, I'm going to go through some examples of popular DI pedals of the various types that I'm going to go through in the video. So let's check it out. DIs are predominantly used by keyboards and bass guitarists. So a DI or direct input is a device that allows you to connect your instrument, in this case on the screen I've got a keyboard, to directly to a recording desk or an audio interface without the need to use a microphone. So how the DI works is it takes the signal from your bass or your instrument, in our case bass, because that's the only instrument we care about, and it features a 1/4 inch connection on one side and then an XLR connection on the other side to allow it to connect to a standard mic cable or XLR cable to then go to your audio interface. Most DIs include a ground switch or ground lift feature, which is there to eliminate any hum or noise. So if you're getting a lot of hum, flicking that ground switch on basically earths the signal and gets rid of that hum for you. So that's the primary function of the DI. It is to take the signal from your bass guitar, convert that into something that can be transferred along fairly long distances with the ability to do ground hum. The benefits are, they connect to a mixing console. They convert the high impedance signal to a low impedance signal. Again, taking your bass signal going through. They convert 1/4 inch to XLR. And they eliminate the noise. Long cable runs can be done, often the mixing desk or the audio system in the studio is a lot further away than, a 5 to 10 meter mic cable. So you use the DI to allow you to go that longer distance. There are 3 basic types of DI pedal or DI box. There is the powered, the passive or unpowered, and then there's those which are normally powered with a preamp function or tone control. Let's have a quick look at some of those. The powered DI usually provides phantom power from the mixing desk. So 48 volt comes off the microphone lead on the mixing desk and it powers that, or they have their own power supply. They have active electronics and they allows for a stronger or cleaner signal. That active electronics often allows for a higher input impedance. Examples of these would be the Radial J48, which is phantom powered, the Behringer Ultra, which has its own power, and really popular is the Ready DI. Now, passive DIs, again, have the 1/4 inch on one input end, and they have the XL on the other. They also often have the ground lift switch, but they don't have a power requirement. This makes them much more rugged and very reliable. You can chuck those in your gig bag, throw them around the beach. They don't really make much difference, but there can be a little bit of signal loss. So if you're looking for that longer lead or longer distance, the powered ones are more beneficial because they keep that signal strength up the length of the cable, whereas these ones are more to provide that balanced input from your bass to the XLR. Examples of these would be the Radial Pro 48, which is what I have in my gig bag, the Behringer Ultra DI 600p, and the Samson MD1. Again, there are more on the market. There are just a couple of examples that are relatively popular. Now look at the preamp DIs. So often referred to as a DI, but realistically, they are a preamp with a balanced output. These have the inclusion of, bass, mids, treble. Some have drive. Again, a lot of them are replicating the preamp section of a bass amp. So for example, the Tech 21 Sans amp, the Origin Effects bass rig, and the Ampeg bass preamp SGTI. So the SGTI is effectively replicating the preamp section of an Ampeg bass amp. Some on the market, like the Ampeg SGDI, have the ability to have cabinet simulations or load cabinet IRs to give that. So again, they're acting now more like an amp modeling device where they're putting the preamp and the speaker cab emulation. That means when you go from your bass through that and out, it's emulating the same as going through your power amp. So not much different to using a multi-effects like the HX or the Quad Cortex, but for some people it's a little bit more analog, and so you still get that analog tone rather than a digital representation of that analog sound. As I said, there's a few examples. The most popular is the Tech 21 SansAmp. Geddy Lee uses this style. Steve Harris has a version of a fly rig that's effectively this that he uses. Origin Effects Bass Rig has one that emulates an Ampeg and one that emulates a Fender. So there's two different styles. The Ampeg Bass Preamp SGTI, as I suggested, and then there's the MXR Bass DI Plus. These are all, again, very popular. There's also a number from the Alpha Omega Dark Glass range, quite often used by metal players. So now let's look at some alternatives to using DI. So now we've looked at what a DI is, the types of DIs and how they work and what they're for. Let's talk about some alternatives. So an alternative to using a DI is miking your amp. A microphone in front of a speaker box is quite popular and has been popular for hundreds of years. Well, not hundreds, but you know what I mean. And so miking is a great option. However, consistency in sound will vary on the mic you use, the venue that you're in, the atmosphere, the placement of the microphone. These are all variables that tend to occur when you mic the amp. So if you're in a studio and you've set the amp up and you put the mic in the right place and it doesn't move, great option. However, if you're playing in a live environment and the venues change night by night, some venues will give you a different microphone or they set it up differently, then getting that consistency of sound is going to be really, really hard with a microphone. Often the sound mixer in the live venue, or especially in the studio, will want you to have a DI for a clean signal anyway. So regardless of those two environments, you're most likely to be plugged into a DI anyway. So miking good, but not necessarily always practical for the bass. Another alternative to a DI is most modern bass amplifiers have an XLR or a balanced output on the back. And these can be set to either pre-EQ or post-EQ signal. And they most often have a ground lift. So what you can do is you can basically use your bass head as the DI itself. So in that case, you don't need to mic the cabinet, or you can mic the cabinet and also still get a clean signal off the back of that DI or that XLR output. That will give you the balanced and the ground lift that you need from a DI without having to buy a separate pedal if that's what's already in your amplifier. I use that on my Mark bass heads, my F500 Mark bass heads, and all of the Mark bass heads that I'm aware of have that balanced output with ground lift. What if you've got an amp modeler? So amp modeling devices, the Helix, the HX Stomp, the Quad Cortex, the Fender ToneMaster Pro, all the other ones on the market. What if you've got one of those? Do you really need a DI for that? Well, remember the DI is giving two basic functions. It's going to give you a balanced, clean signal, and it's going to give you ground loop protection. The Line 6 Helix, the floor and the LT, both have a balanced XLR out and a ground lift capability. So if you're using one of those floor models or the HX rack, then you don't need a DI pedal. Now, if you've got a DI pedal, as we discussed earlier, with its own preamp in it, then you want to use that preamp instead of a preamp module inside the Helix. That's a different conversation. However, if you're using the Helix for your main sound and you want to use a balanced output, you do not need a DI pedal. Now, the Fender ToneMaster Pro also has the balanced XLR out and the ground lift. So again, if you're using one of those models, you don't need it. The Quad Cortex has the balanced XLR out, but it doesn't have a ground lift switch. So if you're using a Quad Cortex and you are in a noise area or you're getting lots of hum on the signal, then you may want to introduce a DI box on the back of that. So Quad Cortex DI front of house or recording desk. But if you're not in a noisy area, then again, that may be an optional component for you. Now the HX Stomp is a bit of a quandary. The HX Stomp has a balanced out, but it's only 1/4 inch. So it uses a TRS, tip ring sleeve, to give the balanced signal of a 1/4 inch to come out. Now, we need it to go to XLR to go to a front of house or a recording desk. So what I use is a 1/4 inch TRS to XLR cable, small cable, and that's what I use. The Stomp itself comes with a plug, but I decided that the plug is a bit rigid, it comes out, whereas the cable will allow it to drop at the back so that I can route the cabling down to the floor and out of the way of everybody. So that's what I use. Now it's going to give me balanced signal to front of house or recording. It doesn't give me, like the Quad Cortex, it doesn't give me the ground lift. So again, if I'm in a noisy environment, I may want a ground lift capable DI box to go there. So in my example, for my live rig, which I use my HX Stomp, I come from the Stomp into the return on my amp, and then I use the balanced DI off the back of the amp if I need that ground lift capability. Otherwise, I go straight from that to an XLR connector, and then that goes straight to the front of house or to the mixing desk. So that's how I use it. So in those cases, again, having a DI box may be of advantage, specifically in that ground loop hum phase. But if you're not getting that, then it's an extra piece of kit you may not want. Having said all of that, I still carry a passive DI, a Radial Pro 48, I think it is, in my gig bag as a fail-safe. If I have no sound, if my HX goes poo and my amp is gone, then I can always just plug straight in from the bass into the DI and at least get a bass signal to the front of house and then see how we go from there. So it's my emergency. So hopefully this has given you some sort of guidance on what a DI is, the 3 types that you might want to use, whether you want a passive one, whether you want a balanced powered one, or whether you want one with preamp capabilities on it, and why you would use it, when you would use it, and do you really need one? Remember, depending on your situation, if you're using an amp modeler like a Helix or a Quad Cortex, or your amp itself has its own DI output or balanced output, you may not need a DI in those situations. So buying one for the sake of putting it on your pedal board may not be the right thing for you. It may also be the right thing for you. I know a number of bass players who have the Helix and also that, but have another think. You don't need one if you have one of those other alternatives. If you found this helpful, please tell your friends, and don't forget to check out our link below to the website where you'll find a bunch of information around what's happening in our community. There is a link to the free giveaway on how to configure your amp or your amp modeler for a great sound. And if you haven't already seen it, check this video out.